Washington Commanders lose to the Dallas Cowboys in Week 7 of the 2025 NFL season. In fact, they got doubled up here for a final score of 44-22. And after everything that's happened over the last 2 weeks, man, the run game, being completely shut down, the defense completely crumbling, Jayden Daniels now being injured. It's going to be a rough go of it here for the Washington Commanders. And unless something changes and changes rapidly for this football team, it's feeling more and more like this season is about to be over. Welcome into the Commanders Report post-game show. I'm your host, Jack Sperry. Make sure you guys click that subscribe button if you haven't already to see all of our Commanders post-game reactions this season. Whether they win, whether they lose, whether this team is a playoff caliber team and turn it around, or whether this team sucks and they're going to be drafting in the top 10 of the draft next year. We're going to be here for every single game, reacting to what happens, giving you guys the very latest news, rumors, all that stuff surrounding the Washington Commanders. So join our family today and help us get to 50,000 subscribers. So let's talk about this game, man. 44-22. In the first half, some decent fight, but just a ton of big plays allowed, multiple downfield shots to George Pickens. CeeDee Lamb had a 75-yard touchdown on a really silly play in an inverted cover 2. They allowed a touchdown they allowed a drive of 80 yards in less than 30 seconds at the end of the first half, which was super embarrassing. But Dak Prescott, man, pretty efficient today, 21-30, 264, 3 tuds. They were pretty darn good today. That offense is legit, no doubt about that. But the Commanders' offense, very disappointing performance today. Penalties, and Jayden was not his best self today, just 12 of 22, missed some open receivers today. He did have 2 touchdowns, did do some stuff with his legs that was good, and then he gets injured. Marcus Mariota comes in. He wasn't fantastic, but Marcus Mariota led this team in rushing today, which is a joke. And then Jaylin Lane had a couple downfield receptions today, but most of that was in garbage time. But really, guys, the big story of the day, and really the big story, I think, over the next month of the season as this team tries to revive its season against some really good football teams, is A, when does Jayden Daniels get back from that hamstring injury that he suffered in the third quarter today? And, B, if he can come back, is he going to have enough help from his supporting cast to be able to legitimately compete with some of these legit playoff and Super Bowl caliber teams they're going to be playing over the next 3 weeks? And, now that you're sitting at 3-4, it really feels like you got to win at least 2 of these next 3 games to even feel like your playoff chances are still alive. But also Dorrance Armstrong, maybe your best defensive player, goes down with a knee injury. He came into this one battling a hamstring issue, and on the first drive of the game, he suffers a knee injury. So that's not great to have that combination of hamstring and knee injuries. If I'd have to guess, I think he's going to be out next week versus Kansas City. And now that's Dorrance Armstrong, Dietrich Wise, and Javonte Jean-Baptiste along the edge. And there's just not a whole lot of size to this group. Drake Jackson's on IR now, too, so you can't bring him in. So you're going to be relying on Jacob Martin, who actually played pretty well today. Von Miller, who's had some good moments, but he's not really a run-defending player nowadays. And Preston Smith, who has been, frankly, pretty darn bad the first 2 weeks he's had a helmet here in Washington. They put Frankie Louvu out on the edge a little bit, but he got bullied in run defense today. Honestly, I don't know the answers to some of the issues that are being presented by the injuries to the defensive end and wide receiver positions here in Washington. And if Jayden Daniels is going to be out for 2-3 weeks, like Lamar Jackson was with a hamstring injury, it's not looking good for the Commanders' chances of keeping their season alive over the next month. But you take a look at the takeaways for me, guys. Number one, it's another slow start. And this is coaching, right? This is an ability to get your guys ready to play, and this is now how many games in a row where this team, gets off to a slow start and they're not taking the issue to the other team and deliver that initial blow and take the fight to the other team. It's no, they get behind the 8 ball and sure, they've done a decent job responding at times to slow starts, but it's just too much, man, and it needs to get better. And that's a culture thing. That's a coaching thing. And, Dan Quinn and his coaches need to figure something out here to start games better so you don't get into a hole. But then also, man, how disastrous was that end of the second quarter, the first half, where you go down and you get a big touchdown to get within one score. You're going to get the ball back to start the second half. The Cowboys have 45 seconds to drive down the field with 2 timeouts. You sack them on the first play, so there's only 31 seconds left, and they're like at the 20-yard line. And then in 2 plays, you throw a great ball down the sideline. I mean, tip your cap to them. That was a great play. But then you give up a big run to Javonte Williams right after that, setting up a touchdown on the next play. It's absolutely embarrassing. And, the Cowboys took full control of that game at that point where they go up 2 scores, and it really forces the issue for the Washington Commanders to start pressing and all this different stuff. And then Jayden gets injured very early in the second half, and, it's just the wheels fell off very early in that second half today. And, what I think happened to the defense today in particular is that, the big plays killed you. There was actually at times where, like, in terms of, stopping them on third down and getting pressure on Dak Prescott and stopping the run, like, they actually did a pretty decent job at times in the first half on down-to-down, play-by-play football, but the Cowboys would just kill you with big plays, whether it was like a 30-plus yard defensive pass interference on the first drive of the game by Mike Sainristil, whether it's playing off coverage versus CeeDee Lamb with Marshawn Lattimore, and CD gets an easy 20 yards. Whether it's, the George Pickens play down the sideline, whether it's the 76-yard touchdown for CeeDee Lamb, whether it's Javonte Williams getting 30-plus yards, whether it's Marcus Mariota giving up a pick frickin' 6, all right, on a third down. Like, the big plays just absolutely walloped the Washington Commanders today and prevented any chance of this team having a fighting chance in this ballgame, plain and simply. And unless this Commanders defense and this Commanders team in general can subdue some of those big types of plays that they have been suffering from this entire season, it's not looking good for this Commanders team and specifically this Commanders defense at this point. And a big reason for that is Marshawn Lattimore is cooked, all right? He's done, all right? He should be done with the Washington Commanders. He should not even get the flight back home to Ashburn, all right? He should have to walk back home after the way he played. When he was locked up one-on-one versus either George Pickens or CeeDee Lamb, I think he won 1 rep today. 1 rep today where the ball was thrown in the direction of that receiver and he won that rep. And it was 1 play down the sideline. Other than that, he was losing to Pickens. He was losing to Pickens on penalties and grabbing and, obvious penalties because he was getting beat. And then he was getting beat by CeeDee Lamb as well. Like, he's just past his prime. And he's not the athlete that he used to be. Injuries have caught up with him. He's getting older. And, when this team traded for him at the trade deadline last year, the hope was he gets healthy. He's still the same Marshawn Lattimore that was a shutdown #1 press man corner in New Orleans for so many years. Fortunately, that's not the version of Marshawn Lattimore we've gotten. And frankly, the Commanders got fleeced in that deal. And I think the best way to move forward, frankly, is to get him off the field. Trade him if you can. I would take a 7th-round pick for him if someone is willing to give me a 7th-rounder. At least it's another draft pick. If that doesn't work, honestly, I would consider cutting him. And I'm putting Mike Sainristil on the outside where he's played his best ball. He's really struggled in the slot this year. Give Sainristil a shot to be this team's #2 corner, because I think Trey Amos can legitimately be this team's #1 corner of the future. Sainristil can be a good #2. And then you play Jonathan Jones or Noah Igbenogany in the slot, and you make do with that. But plain simply, guys, Marshawn Lattimore, unplayable, too inconsistent. Can't have him on the defense. If I'm the Commanders, I'm letting him go this week. So you be the judge down there in the comment section. Grade today's performance from the Commanders, A, B, C, D, or F. How can you give it anything other than an F? Offense not good enough today. Defense not good enough today. Giving up big plays, penalties, everything just fell off the train for the Washington Commanders today. So get your grade down there in the comment section for today's pinned question. Just a second here, I'm going to tell you about our sponsor today at Prize Picks. While I tell you about our sponsor today, let me know your grade for today's performance from the Commanders. With that, let's have a word from our sponsor today. At Prize Picks, you and I, we make decisions every single day, but on Prize Picks, being right can actually get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement this season on Prize Picks, where it's good to be right. Football season is finally here, and you better believe I'll be getting my Prize Picks lineups in all season long. Prize Picks is simple to play. You just pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and if you get your picks right, you could cash in. PrizePicks also puts their users first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. PrizePicks also offers Venmo, Apple Pay, MasterCard, and more for quick and easy deposits into your account this football season. And a new feature from PrizePicks that I absolutely love is injury reboots. If one of your players leaves the game in the first half and doesn't return, PrizePicks will not count it as a loss. So today, unfortunately, I did not win my PrizePicks lineup. I took the more on passing yards for Dak Prescott. Nope. Took the more on rushing yards for Jacory Croskey-Merritt. Nope. And then Jayden Daniels, of course, got injured, and it wasn't in the first half, so I couldn't get an injury reboot on him. So I ended up not hitting on any of these today. So don't listen to me. Apparently, I don't know ball, guys, but you can download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup on the PrizePicks app today. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. I think on defense, guys, it's time to play the young guys, all right? And, this kind of goes into my point about Lattimore, where get Lattimore off the field and, frankly, get Bobby Wagner off the field, all right? Bobby is a liability in pass coverage. I like him as a guy. I like him as a leader. I like him as a mentor. I'm not even sure the Commander should, cut him or anything like that. He can be a good mentor for Jordan Magee. But Magee played really well today, in my opinion. And honestly, he's played really well when he's gotten opportunities all season long. He's really athletic. He's really fast. And he can bring a level of athleticism and speed to this defense that it desperately, desperately needs. All right. And, it's nothing against Bobby Wagner, but I think eventually we want, either Frankie Louvu or Jordan Magee to be the long-term green dot of this defense. And I think that it's about time we start, transitioning one of these guys into that role because plain and simply having Bobby Wagner out there as an every down linebacker is killing this team in pass coverage, and that's one of the big changes that needs to be made moving forward in this defense, in my opinion. But then shifting over to the offensive side of the ball, and things are deteriorating on that side of the ball as well. I mean, less than a week ago, if you would have asked me about how good this offensive line was, I would say, man, they've really played well. They beat up the Raiders. They beat up Atlanta to some degree. They beat up Los Angeles. Like, this has been the most efficient run game in the National Football League. These guys are doing a great job. But now, man, it's like, they can't get any push against the Chicago Bears or the Dallas Cowboys defensive fronts. I mean, really? Those guys have been like bottom 5 run defenses in the league. And over the last 2 weeks, this run game has gotten absolutely nothing. All right. And, part of the reason for that is probably because they're just allowed to play super aggressively, load up the box, not allow any open space there. Frankly, no one's scared of the offense, and no one's scared specifically of the pass catchers. All right. The amount of man coverage that Matt Eberflus played today for the Dallas Cowboys, it was by far the most that he ran against any other team that they played this season. You want to know why that is? That's because they don't respect and they don't really fear any of the guys in the wide receiver room here with the Washington Commanders. Now, part of it is injuries, right? Terry McLaurin's out. Noah Brown's out. Deebo Samuel is out. So, all those things are true, but there's teams play a lot of man versus this team regardless. Green Bay played almost exclusively man coverage, it felt like at times. And Terry McLaurin was playing that game. Deebo Samuel was playing that game. There's just nobody really on this team that really puts the fear of God in these defenses. And because of that, they can pin their ears back. They can put a lot of bodies in the box, stop the run game, really play aggressively to stop the run. Now, I will say Robbie Chosen, a little bit of a bright spot today. I mean, made some nice catches, ran some good routes. It looks like he still has his legs with him. I like what I saw from Robbie Chosen today. I'm kind of excited to see what he's going to be able to do against Kansas City next week on Monday Night Football. But Luke McCaffrey and Jaylin Lane, Lane can't catch the football consistently, even though he is a decent deep threat. Luke McCaffrey just isn't getting enough targets because he's not getting open enough, frankly. And then Chris Moore, is Chris Moore. He's got some good stuff. He's done some good stuff this season, but nobody respects or fears this Commanders passing attack, even when Jayden Daniels is throwing the football. And that leads to them being super aggressive to defend the run. And they just, at this point, there's nothing really that they do well. And something's got to turn around, man, because there's nothing that this Commanders team does particularly well, in my opinion, outside of, some creative offensive play calling stuff from Cliff Kingsbury and then some of the out-of-structure playmaking stuff that Jayden Daniels provides. And even then, Jayden is injured, and he might be missing multiple weeks when you're going through the toughest stretch of your schedule coming up. And because you're sitting at 3-4 and you need to get to a maximum of 7 losses on the season to give yourself a shot to make the playoffs, like you only have 3 more losses the rest of the way afforded to you if you're the Washington Commanders. All right, and you might get those 3 losses in the next 3 weeks, especially if Jayden Daniels is not out there on the field. Now, something that I will say is that Marcus Mariota can play a little bit. He was pretty darn bad today, but he was thrown into a really bad situation. You know, he gets a full week of preparation. You know, they put in a good game plan. You get Deebo Samuel. Maybe you get Terry McLaurin back next week. You know, you get together a good plan in terms of the run game. Maybe you can put together, you know, a decent offensive performance versus Kansas City. This team has won a majority of their games this year with Marcus Mariota as their starting quarterback. So I think that Mariota, if you can surround him with the proper supporting cast and you can get some things going around him and the defense turns things around a little bit, this team can win some football games. But they're going to have to make those changes, and something's going to have to change. I talked about some of those changes. Bench Lattimore, bench Wagner, get younger and faster on defense, and then hopefully you can get healthy on offense in the weeks to come. And hopefully Mariota can hold down the fort. That's the only things that I can really say right now, guys, but point the finger for me down there in the comment section. Who's the most to blame for today's loss? Last week versus Chicago, I blamed it on Jayden Daniels because he did enough to help win the game, but he also lost us the football game. That loss is really looming large as it stands right now in the grand scale of the Commanders season. But today, I have to put it on Dan Quinn. I mean, the coaching staff didn't have these guys ready to go, plain and simply. And, you know, you give up big plays. You don't play disciplined. Lots of penalties as well has been a moniker of this team all season long. It kind of felt like this Commanders team was sniffing their own farts this entire offseason, feeling like, oh, man, we got Jayden Daniels. We're automatically going to be really good. And, you know, some of that focus, some of that drive, some of that hunger might have left the building there in Washington. And, you know, I'm not saying the season is necessarily over yet, but it certainly feels like it with the way that, you know, you've lost the last 2 games. You're now dipping below 500. Jayden Daniels might be out for a number of weeks. You've lost multiple starters out for season. Dorrance Armstrong might be gone for more weeks. Terry McLaurin might be missing more time. And it just seems like everything is compounding and compounding and compounding on this football team right now. And right now it's hard to find a way out. Hopefully they find it in the weeks to come. That'll be it for today's edition of the Commanders Report post-game show. Thank you guys so much for joining me here today. Tomorrow I'm going to be watching the film on what exactly happened today, and I'll be giving you guys my takeaways, my prescriptions on how to try and make this football team a better football team down the stretch so that they can win some football games and maybe make a run towards the postseason. But certainly today, it's not a good feeling in Commanders Nation, and it certainly seems far-fetched at this point that this team's going to be able to turn it around. I hope they do, but right now it certainly doesn't feel that way. But we'll be covering it every step of the way here on the Commanders Report this season, so make sure you click that subscribe button if you haven't already. Till next time, guys, out to the Commanders.